the Falchion, Marth's weapon of choice. The construction of the sword was actually easier than I expected for my first weapon build. I started off by finding an image online of the Falchion. I couldn't find a good Super Smash Bros. Version, so I used another version and did my best to make the appropriate changes during construction. With an appropriate image, I cropped the sword out, enlarged it to scale in graphic, and then made it printable in raster. Once the image was printed, I glued the pieces together and cut it out. This would work as my template for the sword. I then took a yardstick to use as support. This got embedded in the EVA foam to add structure. After all, no one likes a floppy sword. I placed the yardstick onto the EVA foam and the template on top of that. This was because some parts of the template were thinner than the yardstick, so I needed to be sure to make the sword wide enough to accommodate it. After the pattern was traced, I cut out the sword with an X-Acto blade. I initially intended to carve out a groove with a Dremel to fit the yardstick, but this didn't really work, so I ended up just cutting all the way through the foam. Since I now had to seal the yardstick within the foam, I traced out 2 more copies of the sword onto craft foam. I then placed the yardstick in the EVA foam and used barge contact cement to seal it in with the craft foam duplicates. Now came the sanding. A lot of sanding. I used a combination of my Dremel and my mouse sander to bevel the blade and round out the shape of the handle. I did accidentally shave a bit too much off the base of the pommel, but I just wrapped it in some duct tape since I was planning on wrapping it in leather anyway. After the first pass of sanding, I added several layers of gesso. I then went back and sanded over the entire piece again. At this point I realized I hadn't added the grooves in the guards, so I quickly carved them out with my Dremel. I also took a moment to draw out the shape of the gem setting on some craft foam, cut out 2 of them and glue them to the hilt. When the whole sword was ready, I masked off the gem setting and coated both sides with 3 layers of Plasti-Dip. Be sure to apply light coats. I was a little heavy-handed on one side, which caused a few drips. Once the Plasti-Dip had dried, I had Marth's Falchion all prepped for painting. Due to the hollow groove for the yardstick, there is a slight indent that runs down the blade, but it's not super noticeable. I am currently working on a second version of the Falchion right now that uses a completely different technique and creates a far more accurate final product. So if you're interested in seeing that one, don't forget to subscribe.